Up to 85% of people say they feel nervous in high-stakes situations, and quite frankly, I think the other 15% are lying. At the end of the day, there are three major reasons people get nervous. And by the way, those of us who study it believe this is built into being human. We see it in every culture, and we see it develop at a very specific time in kids' development. When kids go from childhood into early tween years, anxiety about speaking in front of others spikes, and it stays high ever since then.
What would happen if we just told the truth?
Welcome to Truth Works, where we dig into the nitty-gritty of leadership and work.
And what needs to change. I'm Jessica Neal.
And I'm Patty McCord.
Our journey together started in HR, but trust us, it's evolved into something wild, honest, and a bit rebellious.
So throw out the handbook. We're here to redefine rules to work for us, not against us.
Let's dive into another episode. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Truth Works. I'm Jessica Neal, your host, and I'm here with my fellow co-host, Jeff Marquitz. Hi, Jeff.
Hello.
How you doing?
I'm great.
How's it going today? You're good?
I'm great.
More importantly than how you're doing, Jeff, is how our guest is doing. We have a guest here today, and I'm very excited to introduce you all to him. He is the author of Think Faster, Talk Smarter. It's a bestseller that probably many of you have read. He also has a podcast, which many of you have probably listened to. And if you haven't, you need to listen to it. Nat, welcome to the show. Tell us about the podcast really quick, because we need to hear about it. By the way, I've listened and it's fantabulous.
Well, thank you. J&J, I love it. Jessica and Jeff.
J&J.
I am thrilled to be here with you. Yes, I've been hosting Think Fast, Talk Smart for a while now, and it's all about communication skills. So our goal is to help people hone and develop their skills. Our episodes are short, 20 minutes long, and the goal is at the end of each episode, people leave with 2 or 3 things they can implement right away. Communication is critical, as I know you would both agree, to success in both our personal and professional lives. And we're here to try to help people to enhance and further develop those skills.
Yeah, well, I'm really excited to kind of get into it and unpack a lot of things with you, because I think in my career, I have grown to appreciate how much communication impacts and fuels businesses and can be a determining factor in success or not success. So I want to get into that, but we always like to go back in time a little bit on this podcast. I want to know how this all happened. How did you get into researching this, studying this? Like, what led you to communication as your mission?
I'm going to take you back all the way to when I was a young boy.
Okay.
So I am the son of a elementary school teacher and a lawyer. So you can imagine that at our dinner table, our conversations were often around communication. My mother was always thinking, how can I make this idea I have to teach engaging, help the students learn? And my father was always very much, how do we make this clear, concise, organized, and structured? So I just grew up in an environment where communication was important, and we talked about it a lot. When I got to university, I thought I was going to be a doctor, and then I met organic chemistry and calculus, and they both told me that perhaps not the right approach. And at the time, I was an undergraduate at Stanford, and they had this new program, that's how old I am, it's well established now, called human biology, which was a combination of biology and the social sciences. And I thought, oh, this is a way to get into medicine and not have to do all the hard stuff that I'm not very good at. In the very first class, they brought in a psychologist, and he came in, and I was mesmerized, and I found this is what I need to study. So I immediately switched my major to psychology and found that what I was most interested in psychology was really communication. I was fascinated by it, and I started even as an undergrad studying anxiety and communication and how we can get better at it. Went to graduate school, worked in the corporate world for over a decade or so, saw the impact and importance of communication. I ran learning and development for software companies, and then had an opportunity to come back to my passion, which is teaching. I adore teaching. I adore learning and teaching communication. I started actually when I left high tech. I taught high school for 2 years. I learned a tremendous amount as a high school teacher, and then I have graduated to Stanford's Graduate School of Business, where I've been for almost 20 years teaching strategic communication.
Wow. Amazing. So what is it because you've been doing this for a long time. What is it about the aspect of communication that keeps you on this thread? Is it just that it's so hard for everybody? What is it that you really just are continuing to try to dig down into?
So to me, communication is operationalized empathy. It's how we connect with other people, and I'm very fascinated by that. I am passionately driven to make sure we hear people's voices, and many people, for whatever reason, feel uncomfortable, feel nervous sharing, and so I'm driven to really help people feel more comfortable and confident in their communication, and have explored it both in a planned communication way and spontaneous communication. And now with technology being so omnipresent in communication, it's just adding a whole new layer. So my curiosity has not waned at all. I'm immensely passionate, but it really is to help people connect, to help people share their thoughts and ideas. I firmly believe we are better off when we hear lots of different opinions and ideas.
Yeah, and I think you kind of touched on this, but in technology and where things are headed with AI,
Mhm.
I happen to believe that the skill of communication is going to increase greatly, and those that communicate really well are going to maybe thrive, and those that aren't are going to struggle a bit.
I 100% agree. I think AI is making human connection more and more important. Communication is the vehicle for that. The ability to communicate well in an AI world is critical. And AI can absolutely help us communicate better. It can help us better understand those we communicate with. And it can also cause great damage to our relationships. And I'm happy to dig into those. But I've been spending a lot of time thinking about and writing about these very topics.
Yeah, how do you think about that, the
Mhm.
damaging side of it?
Well, so first, I believe there's what I'm calling an authenticity crisis around communication with AI. AI can allow us to be perfectly polished. Our words and grammar can be nearly perfect, and yet it's not ours. And so a lot of what we need to do is demonstrate our authenticity in our communication. And I'll give you a very practical example. For a long time, I coached a lot of people to be as polished as possible in their communication. And my advice now is to lighten up on that a little bit. Be human. If you stumble or have a foible, if you hedge a little bit, if you have a filler word here or there, that's how we know you're human. So part of it has to do with that authenticity. And then the other big thing that I'm very concerned about is what I'm calling the empathy paradox. As I alluded to, AI can help us to be much more empathetic. I can say, I'm meeting with Jessica. I know what Jessica does. I know the type of thing. I've seen her writing. I've listened to her podcast. I can have AI help me tailor my messages to really resonate with Jessica, which is great. It's helping me. It's helping my EQ. But if I, on the other hand, outsource all of my really challenging, difficult conversations to AI, if I have to retrench somebody, if I have to give a negative performance review, and I have AI do it, empathy is a muscle. You have to build
Hmm.
it. You have to work it. And if I outsource all that, I end up with an empathy atrophy, and that can be
Mm,
really dangerous. So, and what I worry about the most, and I'll stop talking, you've got me on my soapbox. I worry about young children. I worry
hmm.
about teens and tweens who've
Yeah.
never had the alternative, right? This is just the way they do it.
Yeah.
And that empathy really concerns me. So yeah, there's a lot to think about with AI. Again, I don't think it's all bad. I think there's a lot of good that comes from it. I see it in my own life and in the life of my students and the people I coach, but I am worried.
I have a
Hmm.
question for you.
Yeah.
Shifting gears from the AI, I was
Yes.
just talking with somebody about this the other day. I did a talk when I was at Greylock the first time, and I did this talk a few different times. It's on YouTube, but I followed a guy named Glenn Kelman, who is the CEO of Redfin.
Hmm.
Glenn is a tremendously gifted speaker, like
Hmm.
beyond, like, I don't know how he does it. And then there's me, who's definitely not a tremendously gifted speaker. And I wonder, like, in the personality dynamic that you've studied of people, what's the difference between the two?
So I firmly believe that we can all learn to be better speakers. There are people who, for whatever reason, have in their life experience, or maybe just the genetic personality they ended up with, have a slight or a head in the race just a little bit. Being extroverted, Being open to novel experience, these personality traits can help you be more engaging. Being risk-seeking, risk-taking can help. So there are differences, but I wouldn't do what I do and have done it for as long as I have if I didn't believe that we can all learn to improve. There are skills that you can invoke that will help. Maybe you'll never reach his level, but you certainly can become more engaging. And it's just like any skill. You just have to practice it, work on it, and have a good guide. I tell people there are only 3 ways to get good at communication: repetition, reflection, and feedback. You got to do the reps. Nobody ever got good by just thinking about it. You
And
have
this
to
is
reflect, and then you
and
have to
this is
give feedback.
beyond
Yeah,
this is
yeah,
beyond a presentation. This is a
yeah.
life skill.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. And the goal is to be authentic and true. You should feel like the same person to people when they hear you one-on-one have a conversation, when you lead a meeting, when you give a presentation. And so these skills are fundamental to us, and we can work on all of them.
Yeah. I just think back on my career, and as I
Mhm.
progressed, I was always really good in a meeting, right? I was always very
Mhm.
good at like leading a meeting, but then it was like, okay, now you have to present to the whole company and then, thousands of
Mhm.
people.
Yeah.
And I never got nervous in a big meeting. I would have meetings with hundreds and hundreds of people across the world, and I that didn't make me nervous. But then presenting like a,
Mhm.
kind of like a inspirational thing,
Uh-huh.
right? I would literally have panic attacks, like,
Right.
before because, and I think it was maybe the combination of like being on a stage and the lights on you and it's more formal, but also I felt enormous amount of pressure to be inspiring. And I was like, I think it's inspiring, but I don't know if they're going to think it's inspiring. And I would practice so much that when I got up there, I would literally have like an out of body experience. Like
Mhm.
I didn't even know I was on stage. And then I was like, and my, the like amount of sweat coming off of me. And I remember one time I was like, I kind of like paused and I kind of missed my flow. And I was like, everybody, I'm just sweating so much. And I think it was like the favorite talk that I gave to people because I told them I was sweating. I don't know, but because it humanized me maybe,
Mhm.
but it was terrifying. And the only way I could get through the terror was practice. And I could
That's
literally say it with my eyes closed.
So what you're recounting is the anxiety that most people feel. Up to 85% of people say they feel nervous in high stakes situations. And quite frankly, I think the other 15% are lying. A lot of my initial career was spent studying anxiety around speaking and how we can manage it. My first book is called Speaking Up Without Freaking Out, and it's all about how to work on those techniques. And what you're describing is very real, those physiological symptoms. At the end of the day, there are 3 major reasons people get nervous. And by the way, those of us who study it believe this is built into being human. We see it in every culture, and we see it develop at a very specific time in kids' development. When kids go from childhood into early tween years, anxiety about speaking in front of others spikes, and it stays
Ah,
high ever since then. But that
why?
doesn't mean we can't manage it. Well, if you want the evolutionary explanation,
Yeah.
it's very simple. When our species was evolving, we would hang out in groups of about 150 people. That was our tribe. And your relative status in that group meant everything. If you had higher status, you got access to resources, food, shelter, reproduction. If you had low status, literally life and death for you. And anything you would do that would risk that status, like speaking up in front of people and potentially making a mistake, would jeopardize your status. And that was something that
You couldn't
was
do
life
that.
threatening. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we believe it's part of us. But that said, you can learn to manage it just like any phobia that we have. Our anxiety is initiated by 3 primary sources, and you highlighted one for sure. It's the audience we're speaking in front of, it's the situation, the room, the space, virtual, in person, and it's the goal. And in what I heard you describe, Jessica, the goal of having to be motivational and inspirational cause stress for you. You weren't as stressed when you were informing or leading, but when it was inspiring. And that's goal-based anxiety. And there's certain techniques that one can employ to manage different types of anxiety, goal-based, situation-based, or audience-based. And that's the good news. The not so good news is it takes time. It's not a light switch. It's not like you learn one technique and all of a sudden you're amazingly confident. It takes time, but over time, you can learn to become more comfortable and confident. That's why in my strategic communication classes at the business school at Stanford, the very first thing we talk about is confidence, and students create an anxiety management plan that throughout the quarter they're testing and honing. So when they matriculate from the class, they have something they can use. It takes time, but with it, you can become more confident.
Where were you when
I was in a
needed you?
classroom. I was in a classroom somewhere. I'm older than you. I'm sure I was
I
in a
needed an
classroom
anxiety
somewhere.
management plan for sure.
How do
Yeah.
you give
Yeah.
people the tools to do the reps?
Yeah. So one, it's helping them. I do this in several ways. So I coach lots of people, and I will often ask people to share with me another skill that they've developed. Sometimes it's a musician, an athlete, somebody who's great at painting, whatever. And I'll say, how did you get better? And they will all say, hey, I practiced, I had a good coach, and it's the same thing. So helping people see that it's a skill. Somehow we feel like we were born being able to talk, or most of us are, and therefore we should be able to do it well. And that's not the case. You have to put in the reps. So one, helping people see that good things come when you put in the work. Two, helping people see very specific, small chunk steps that you take. It can be very daunting to say, I want to do a TED Talk or speak at Davos. And, that's a big thing. But if you just say, hey, in the next meeting at work, I want to speak up and assert a position. And if we take those incremental steps, it can make a big difference. So helping people chunk it into reasonable steps, helping them understand that they have worked hard in other areas of their lives, and this is more of the same, and helping them reflect on the successes that they've had. We tend to focus on all the failures when it comes to communication and the things we could have done better. And it can be very inspirational and motivating to reflect on, hey, when I did that, this got better and that led to this. So helping people focus on the positive as well. But it takes time, Jeff, and it is an approach mindset piece.
I wonder, I've thought about this a number of times, and it relates to a comment that we mentioned earlier. It's not a skill that's taught to kids in grade school. And if you look at the persistence of AI and the need for, even just social media and the need for kids, teenagers, my kids are 23 and 26, just the need to develop communication skills as a differentiator, which I think it is.
Absolutely.
How does this become more of mainstream learning as opposed to something that somebody says you need to learn how to communicate better, so go find a consultant to help you?
Yeah, get Matt.
Yeah.
Well, I do like that part of it, but so Jeff, I 100% agree that this is something that we should be teaching in schools. I am heartened that it is somewhat changing. So my children are around your children's age, slightly younger. It was certainly devoid from their education. It was devoid from mine. I have a young nephew, and he's 9, and they are doing much more collaborative work than we ever did, my kids ever did. They are getting more instruction and information. So I am heartened to see that some of this is taking hold. Is it going to fix the problem? I don't think so. But the other thing, it's not just at school. It's those of us in positions of authority, be it parents, be it, bosses, managers. We need to role model effective communication, and we need to highlight it. So I would love if everybody listening, if you're in a position where you run a meeting, at the end of every meeting, dedicate the last minute or two of the meeting to reflecting on the quality of the communication of the meeting. I'm not saying rehash things. I'm saying, hey, Jessica, that was really great when you paraphrased what Jeff said. It really brought us back on track. Or, Jeff, I really liked how your slides had a few images and not just bullet points. Just that kind of feedback puts the focus on communication. It sends a message. When you interview people for jobs or do performance reviews, communication should be part of it. What's working in your communication? What can we do to help? That kind of thing inculcates a culture of communication, a focus on it, and people are motivated by what they know others are paying attention to. So I do think education has to do with it. We have to do something in our schools, but we as people in positions of authority need to be role modeling and encouraging it.
Yeah, no, I agree. But you brought up work, so I'm going to go to work.
Sure.
And, now that I am no longer at Netflix, I advise and work with a
Sure.
lot of companies. I'm on the VC side, but
Yes.
one of the things I learned at Netflix was that when we were really clear and communicating really well, things went much better for us. And so we learned over time to get really, really good at communication. We dedicated a lot of time to the art of it, right? And doing it and practicing it. And we practice it in all kinds of ways. But I go out in the world and advising companies that are public to private and small to big. And communication is a plague in these organizations.
Mhm.
Like it is, I would say one of the number one things holding them back from being great. It's just people aren't communicating at all, whether it's they're giving employees feedback, whether it's like people understand the goals, whether they're talking about the conflicts and the tensions. I was just talking to a woman that I coach earlier today, and she works with the founder, and he's a man of not many words. And it's like, I agree. And that's all. And I'm like, that's all she gets. She's like, how do I get more? And we talked about how to get more. But why is communication? I mean, I understand that communication is hard for everyone, but at work, it seems to be even harder.
I think there are many reasons for it. One, to Jeff's point, we just aren't trained in it, right? It's not something that people get regular training on. Two, it is often seen as a necessary evil. It's like the last thing people think about. When you're forming strategy, then one of the last things people do is, oh, how are we going to communicate? I mean, I teach strategic communication. I think communication is where you start, but it's the prioritization of it. And again, it's the focus, where you put focus. As you found in your time at Netflix, when you put focus on it, it can help. An effective communication plan, having bench strength of people you're confident in who can get up and represent the company message, can pitch, can sell, all of that boils down to communication. I am often brought in as a consultant when things have gone terribly awry, and it's fix it. And what I love working with startups and founders is you can build what I call a communication infrastructure. And that's not just technology, that's processes, people, ways of approaching it that can not only help you manage effectively, it can put you light years ahead of your competition if you're communicating well. It's hard because people just don't focus on it. And that's the real challenge. It doesn't bring in money right away. It doesn't bring products or services to market right away, yet it is the vehicle through which all that happens. And it's
Right.
very easy. We don't invest as much as we should in roads and bridges, but that's how we get information with people.
Right.
Places. It's the same thing. If we invested time and put a priority on it, it would make a big difference.
Yeah.
How much, if you look back at sort of the age where, when you're young, you probably communicate pretty freely and you don't really think about consequences, but then all of a sudden you get a little older and a little bit more self-aware. And I think about tough conversations or conversations that I don't think I'm doing well. And the psychology plays in. So I start to worry about what the other person might be receiving. And so it becomes a blocker. How much of learning to communicate well is the skill sets or the reps versus the psychology of not worrying about what the other person's thinking?
Yeah.
So to me, communication is about two things. It's about mindset and messaging, and you really can't separate those two. So you do have to go in with an audience-centric, goals-based approach. I have to see it as something that is in service of the person or people I'm talking to. I have to be patient with myself and the other person to listen. Those are the foundational principles, the mindset approach. There is the messaging. You have to get the reps. You have to practice. You have to think about, how do I structure what I'm trying to get across in the most effective and efficient way? You can't untangle the two. When I teach it, I dissect it and we talk about the piece parts, but in fact, it is all together. So the answer to your question is it's both. You have to have that other-centric, empathetic approach. You have to realize that if I'm in service of my audience, it's less about me and what I think about myself, what others think about. It's more about getting the value across to the other. And then it's, how do I package the information, structure it, word it in such a way that it's likely to resonate and motivate. So both of those pieces are tied intimately together to be successful.
How does it play out in terms of day-to-day communication, not message? I mean, everything's a message, but in your daily living, day-to-day
Mhm.
conversations, how does it play out?
That's the ground where the battle is fought, right? I mean, that's how we do it. When I have a conversation with anybody, my first thought is, what does this person need in this moment? So what is it they need? And that could be emotional, that could be information. I always encourage everybody, yourselves included, to have a goal in your communication. To me, a goal has three parts: information, emotion, and action. What do you want people to know? How do you want them to feel? What do you want them to do as a result? And when I approach my communication, even a conversation with my kids, my friends, my family, that helps me focus. And there'll be times where I'll dial back on that focus. I just want to shoot the breeze with people, but there's still a goal. And then I'm listening intently, because it is in listening that I best understand your position, where you're coming from. I love paraphrasing. I think paraphrasing is really important. After you say something, I will share what I heard, not in a grand way like what I hear you saying is, but I might highlight a few words. That not only validates I heard you right, but it validates you as a person. I've actually listened. And then I begin to think about my messaging, and all of us can do that in all of our communication. The foundational principles of giving a major talk and having an interaction with your chum and buddy are exactly the same.
Hmm.
How important they are and how much time we spend focusing on them, that's what varies. But audience-centric, goal-based, structured communication, absolutely what's needed.
So if I'm in the workforce right now, or
Mhm.
I have a 6-year-old,
Okay.
so I'm
It's a
even
little
more
different end of
worried.
the spectrum
I
from
know
Jeff
I'm
and
a
me.
little
Yeah.
more worried about what's going to happen to him, but we'll focus
Well,
on
we're
the.
pretty worried about what's
Yeah, I don't know what his life is going to be like, but we will see. But the people that are in the workforce right now,
Mhm,
and this this whole AI thing is
mhm,
coming, and it's coming really fast. What is your advice to them if communication is going to be key
uh-huh,
and have them stand out from the pack? What should they be doing now? I mean, obviously all the things that you're talking about being intentional,
mhm,
but is
right,
there something like
mm,
just in their day-to-day that they can
mhm,
start with to start practicing?
sure. So, as an educator, I would be remiss if I didn't say get yourself some education. Lots of ways to do that. Take a class, listen to a podcast. Think Fast, Talk Smart is there for you.
Matt's podcast.
Listen, go to Toastmasters. Toastmasters is an international organization designed to help make it a priority. If
Right.
you want to become good at the guitar, you practice and you invest some effort. So take some time to find out that way. Second, observe, watch what people do. We all know excellent communicators. We know people who aren't so great. What are they doing? What's different? Watch professional speakers, TED Talks,
Mm-hmm.
politicians. Watch people who speak for a living. Begin to catalog and note, not so you become them, but just start to pay attention. That awareness will help. And
Mm-hmm.
then give yourself opportunities to practice. If you're with a group of friends or in a class, if you're younger, raise your hand and ask. If you don't want to actually assert a position, just paraphrase what you've heard others say. Get your voice out there. The practice helps. And then perhaps most importantly in all of this is reflect. Think about what worked. Think about what didn't. I have had a practice for decades. Before I go to bed, I journal. I've always journaled. But before I go to bed, I will write down one thing that went well in my communication that day and one thing that didn't. And then every Sunday, I'll reflect on the week's reflections and I'll make a plan for myself. I'm not saying I'm a great communicator, but I am a much better communicator for having had this practice. So these are some of the things, and they don't take a ton of time, but they will
Yeah.
pay dividends down the road.
Yeah, I think it's as you were talking, I was thinking like if I'm that person, okay, I have the intention of practicing, but then when it gets down to it, I
Sure.
get scared and I back out and
Mhm.
I don't raise my hand in the
Mhm.
meeting. I remember when I first got promoted to be a VP at Netflix, we had these really big meetings every 4 weeks, and it was all the VPs and the C-level, and it was a whole day and it was super intense and the stakes were really high and all the smartest people in the world were in that room. And I'd been to a few meetings, and my boss was like, you're not participating in the meetings, right? And I was like, yeah, I know. Was more listening. I
Yeah,
was like,
sure.
trying to, and some of these things I hadn't heard before, so I was, kind of processing. She's like, but you're in the room, so you gotta participate, and or don't be in the room. And I was like, oh,
Right.
that's, shoot, man, I don't want to get kicked out of the room, so I got to start participating. But there was some fear there for sure, but there was also like I was processing the information at the time and I didn't want to just like talk to talk. And one of the most admired guys that was in the room was a good friend of mine, and he talked all the time. And I kind of did what you were just saying. I watched him because he raised his hand all the time, and he would say things that I was thinking.
Mhm.
And I was like, well, if he's one of the smartest guys and he's saying something that I'm thinking, then I guess I'm okay. I'm pretty smart too, right? And so then I was like, and then I just made a commitment to myself that in every single meeting, I would say something,
Right,
right?
right.
And like, I just forced myself to do it. But I don't know if that's the advice that you would give people or like,
So
how do
what
you
I
work
love that
through
you
the
were
fear?
Well, so that's a different story, and we can talk about that in a moment. But I like that you were observing, you were seeing what the person was doing, and that you challenged yourself to contribute. And again, a contribution doesn't have to be some novel new idea. That can be very risky for people. But it could be asking a question for clarification. It could be just paraphrasing what you've heard. The ability to paraphrase and get people aligned is a very powerful tool. It adds a lot of value, but has lower risk because you're not adding anything new. Now, the anxiety piece is real. In a room where you are new and there's a lot of hot and heavy discussion going on, it can feel very intimidating. But there are things we can do. The physiological responses that you have, take some deep belly breaths. That'll slow down the heart rate. You mentioned earlier, like me, I blush and I perspire when I get nervous. You can cool yourself down. That's because your body's getting hotter. Hold something cold in the palms of your hand. It'll cool your body temperature down. You'll sweat and blush less. On a cold morning, if you've ever held a warm mug of tea or coffee and felt it warm you up, we're just doing it in reverse. If you shake a lot, do some big broad gestures. If you're standing, take a step. That's adrenaline trying to move you to a safer position. So if you move, the shakiness goes away. So there's some things we can do to manage the symptoms. And then we also have to think about the sources. What's originating this? You don't want to look foolish. You want to look like you deserve to be in that room. So what are ways that you can remind yourself you have value to bring? What are ways that you can contribute something that demonstrates that value? And then when you do that, all of a sudden you begin to feel more comfortable and confident. So it's incremental. It's that, as we talked about with Jeff, it's that mindset and messaging combined together, but you can feel better. And then it's one step at a time. You don't have to be the loudest, longest speaker in that room the first time you join.
When you think about tough conversations or tough situations that maybe you've been involved with, you don't have to name the specifics for confidentiality, but what is a situation where you just couldn't help somebody?
So it's hard to help somebody who doesn't want to be helped.
Yeah.
And so people have to be open. When I coach people, the very first thing I do is I ask for a meeting where we can just determine fit. So people have to feel comfortable with me. What I do is not therapy, but it is causing people to reflect. It is causing people to think about it. So the situations where I have had the most difficulty are where people are not willing to do the work. Often it's people being told that they have to improve their communication and they have to work with somebody like me. And that's hard. But I've found ways to open people up to ask questions, to have them review successes, to have them understand, get out of their head and into the heads of other people. That can help. But for me, the biggest challenge is if people don't want to do the work or don't feel they need to do the work. And that's hard because I'm not the kind of coach that wants to break somebody down before you build them up. There are people who do that. And that's not where I want to go. But sometimes people need to really see that. So
Yeah.
that's the hardest type of person to work with. And I have worked with many tough people in this valley, and
Sure.
we've had good success. So
I'm sure you have many a story that
many a story that
we
is
would
true.
love to hear. Different podcasts.
Different
Or
location.
drinks.
Yeah,
Drinks.
exactly.
Do you ever still get nervous when you're doing?
Absolutely. Oh,
Okay.
absolutely. Yeah,
So
no, and
even to
I
the
started as a
coach
very
of the-
nervous speaker. Yeah.
Even
No,
to the
and
coach.
it's part of being human. I'll tell you the one time I get nervous. There are a group of communication faculty at different top business schools around the world. We get together every year to help, and we support each other. It's great. We exchange best practices. When I am asked to present in front of people who do what I do, have done it longer, are luminaries in the field, I get nervous. I have my own anxiety management plan I execute on. I take a few deep breaths. I tend to walk around the building or have conversations with people. And this is going to sound silly, and everybody listening is going to think it's a little weird. I say tongue twisters out loud. I do this not with people around me, but I do this for two reasons. One, it warms up my voice. A lot of us think we can go from silence to brilliance when we speak, yet we know when we exercise, we should warm up. If we sing, we should warm up. And the other thing it does is it forces me to be very present oriented. So before I go into this room with all these luminaries, all these people I respect and work with, I'll do those three things and it helps calm me down. That's my anxiety management plan.
So you got to get an anxiety management plan, is what I'm hearing.
Well, yeah, absolutely, and
Yeah.
and you can build one on your own. You can work with somebody who can help, but find the techniques. Most of us have some other activity in our lives that we do where we get nervous, and we figured out a way to deal with it. So a lot of the people I coach were athletes, for example. Well, what did you do before the game to help calm yourself down? Well, I took some deep breaths. I would do some running. Yeah, great. Do the same things or something similar. So we have ways in our lives to manage stress and anxiety. We often don't connect that I can do something similar or even the same in my speaking.
I found that I love your experience with it. I found that when you give in communications, it's very relaxing. But where I've seen people fall down is when they have to turn the give into a get. When all of a sudden they have an ask out of the communication, because they could spend all of this time asking, what can I do for you? How can I help you? And figure that out. But then if they have to turn around and it becomes a get, that's where it breaks down.
I certainly communication is different based on the goal, the give versus the get. And I've had similar situations, Jeff, but I've also seen it in the exact opposite. It really depends on just the specific parts of it. It is different when when there's something you need to get from a conversation versus when you need to give. Yet underlying all of that, I would argue, is fundamentally appreciating what's relevant and salient for the other person. The best communication is the communication that's honed and dialed in for the person or people you're talking to. And if I need to get something from you, I need to think about what motivates you the most and how I can show you giving me what I need from you will be beneficial for me as well as for you. So it really boils down to really appreciating who you're speaking to and understanding what's relevant and motivating to them.
Yeah.
I think that, go
Go
ahead.
ahead, Jeff. No, you go.
I was going to say, I think that's invaluable advice from a mindset perspective for anybody listening.
Yeah. And I think one of the things that you're saying is you have to be really intentional. And I just don't think people are that intentional, and they haven't thought about the goal. They haven't thought about what they want the other person to feel, and they just go into the conversation and wing it, and then it kind of blows up.
Yeah, no, people see communication. They see success in communication as broadcasting information out. I'm successful because I just got it out, and that's wrong. Communication is successful when the other person understands and can act on what you're saying. So you're right. It has to do with both intention, but attention. You have to pay attention to details and specifics.
We always ask our guests to leave our listeners with a bit of inspiration. You've already given them tons of advice and great things to think about as they're going into their next conversation, whether that be professional or personal. But what is the inspiration you want to leave them with today?
I would like everybody to think about a communicator in their lives who has inspired them, who's motivated them, from whom they've learned something important. And I challenge everybody to be that person for somebody else. What did they do in their communication and their way of getting information across that inspired and motivated you? And how can you do something similar? Not to mimic them exactly, but it is through communication that we inspire and we connect. So let's figure out ways to do that for other people.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, be who you want to be communicated by, right?
Exactly.
It's a gift that you can give. And if you get really good at it, it can be pretty meaningful to your career, to your life in general.
And it reduces a whole lot of stress, because if you think about a lot of the messes you have to clean up, at some point communication played a role in it. And if you can communicate effectively, you can avoid some of that as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm just so grateful that you came on the show today.
Well, thank you.
And I'm walking away with a lot of learning. I know Jeff is too, and so are
Absolutely.
the listeners. Where can people find you if they want to find out more?
Great. Yes. So 3 places. If you're interested in the podcast, check out fastersmarter.io. All of our podcasts is there, but we're on any place you can get podcasts. You can find us: YouTube, Spotify, Apple, etc. LinkedIn is a great place to interact with me directly. You can go to mattabrahams.com to see all about the offerings that I have. Whatever you do, take the time to hone and develop your communication. It will fundamentally change your life and the lives of those you interact with.
Absolutely. I'm a believer.
Amen.
Amen. Hallelujah. All right. Well, thank you again for coming
Thanks,
on the
Matt.
show. We are so grateful, and go help everybody communicate because it's so important.
Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity. It was very nice to be with you.
Yes, you too.
Thanks for listening to Truth Works.